welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look at ways that we can come together and work together to more effectively minister. And today we have with us Steve and Rebecca Riggs. They are veteran missionaries to France. Hello, Steve. Hello, Miss Becky. And you might have heard that Miss Becky has been dealing with the COVID-19 virus for some time now. So we thought this might be helpful to our listeners in a couple of ways. One is we believe it's helpful to know a bit about the virus. She can tell us from a firsthand standpoint. But the other thing is we all are concerned about the rest of the world, and we'll hopefully be able to talk a bit about France and what's happening there so we can more effectively pray. So, hey, welcome, Miss Becky. Welcome, Steve, to the Better Together podcast.
Thank you.
Well, Miss Becky, you've been going through it for quite a while. Why don't you tell us a bit about your experience over the last several days as you've been dealing with this COVID-19 virus?
Okay, it started a couple weeks ago with just extreme fatigue. And and then I kind of got like a really dull sore throat. And I thought to myself, this is the beginning of a sinus infection. Though it was just really dull. It wasn't a sharp sore throat. And then the next thing was, and by then that was like a Saturday night, and I put myself in isolation. I knew it was coming anyways in France, but I just said, I'm not going out anymore. So, and then after that, I started getting a really, really bad headache, really, really bad fever and chills and just aching everywhere. But me, I still thought, well, this is, cross my fingers, this is still sinus. And then I got this kind of a dry cough. Well, that was Saturday, it started. And then by Wednesday, Steve said,
Sunday night.
No.
Okay.
By Wednesday, Steve said, I know this timeline because I experienced it. By Wednesday, Steve said, you're going to the doctor.
Yeah.
And so I went Wednesday morning, and he said, you have the virus. And he didn't test, because over here they do not test unless you are put in the hospital. They're still talk about doing it, but they don't. And so, and I even then, stubborn, said, now are you sure, doctor, this is not sinus? And he said, no, you do not have, you have all the symptoms of the virus. So all they do is they treat the symptoms. Since it's a virus, he gave me a cough syrup for a dry cough. And then he gave me, he told me not to take ibuprofen, but to take paracetamol. And so that was for the aches and the fever and everything. So that's what I did. And then by Friday, the cough had turned really deep into my throat, in my chest, and it was no longer dry. And so Steve called again, and I went on Saturday morning, and he had me come in before any of his other patients came in. And he said, yeah, it's going down into your chest now, and it's like you're on your way to bronchitis. And I've had bronchitis before, so I was figuring it was going that way. And but he checked both times. He checked my oxygen levels, and he said, you're getting oxygen. But I would sneeze, and I would, it's like I could not get my breath, and then coughing, just constant coughing. And so that's what my symptoms were. And even now, it's just been like the last day or so that the coughing stopped, but my breathing's still not back to normal. It's been 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and it's still not back 100%, and just still fatigue. Fatigue from it.
Yeah.
If I can add one thing in there that I think she forgot to mention, all the symptoms she had. What really made us call the doctor, when I insisted she call the doctor, it was impressive how quickly her breathing changed. I mean, she had these symptoms with the headache and with the coughing, and just it kind of, at first it was like a general type flu, but then it was almost like overnight, all of a sudden her breathing pattern was just, she was having a difficult time breathing, and she was talking about how how her chest just felt like there was pressure on it. And that's when we said, it's time to call a doctor and find out what's going on, which may have actually been too late to call. But
Yeah.
the doctor, immediately diagnosed her. And one thing just to add about France, the doctor diagnosed her immediately and said, you have the coronavirus. But in France, they won't do the testing unless your symptoms get to a point where you require to be in the hospital. And so they didn't actually do the test. It was his diagnosis, but he was 100% sure that that's what it was. And fortunately, her symptoms, she was able to stay here at home. And that says something too about the numbers. When you hear the statistics about people that have taken the test, it's probably at least here in France, what they're telling us, it's probably at least twice that much, because there's so many people that have it that don't go to the hospital and will never be tested for it. But the breathing was really what personally scared me the most when I saw him having breathing.
Well, the doctor told me, he said the pattern that they're having is you get these flu-like symptoms and maybe about 7 to 10 days, 7-8 days into it, all of a sudden the breathing will get hit, your respiratory. You think you're getting better, and all of a sudden, and that's pretty much what happened to me. It just, all of a sudden, just everything became trying to breathe.
But you did sense something was not quite right. In other words, it was a little bit different than other illnesses in the past, and you took care of yourself. You just self-quarantined on your own.
Right.
And then it sounds like, there's not a Theraflu or treatment like that, but they just treated the symptoms.
Treat the symptoms. That's all they can do right now. I know that my first week, I had to have, I felt so bad that Steve was like the caregiver. I mean, I just couldn't hardly get out of bed. I was back in bed, just worn out from it, and then staying but coughing and everything. So, but other than that, just taking my medicine like he told me to, check oxygen levels just to make sure. So,
Yeah. And you guys were in pretty good health before, which
I really, that's what Becky, one of the things she told me when she was having the breathing difficulty, we're hearing all this information too about the virus. And she said, I can easily see how somebody who already has difficulty breathing, that this could really be fatal. Fortunately, she was strong enough that her body was able to resist it. But I remember you telling me that.
Oh yeah, I can see someone with either heart problems or already, how it would just be really hard for their bodies to. Yeah. And over here we had a doctor, an Italian doctor, said this is not the flu. This is acute pneumonia. He said, this is what happens. It starts off and everyone's calling it a flu, but he says it goes immediately into pneumonia.
He could pick it up pretty quick. Yeah. So it sounds like you guys are a little ahead of where we're at as far as the numbers of people and the widespread. It sounds like that was even why your doctor was able to pick this up pretty well. Tell us a bit about the rest of France, and I think that'll help us pray for France as well, where the nation of France is at this point.
Well, one of the things that's, of course, I guess the major thing right now is the president of France, the government has declared basically a self-quarantine, stay-home order. They haven't officially extended that through the month of April. But the president spoke just recently, a couple of days ago, and it looks like it's going to be through the entire month of April. Just all the measures you hear about telling people to stay home. We have every time we go out of the house, you have to go online, and there's a document that you can download, and you print it out, and it has different reasons that you're permitted to go out. And every time you go out, you have to print this document, you have to check one of the cases, and you have to put the time that you're going out. You're not supposed to go out unless it's necessary for longer than an hour. And so that's going on nationwide. People are basically respecting it.
If you don't, you get fined.
Yeah, there's like a
Yeah.
$140 fine.
Mm.
Like I went downtown, went down to do some grocery shopping, and the police are at the roundabouts, and they're checking papers and everything, and so you can be fined. One of the things that happened that was interesting was when the government first put out the order, and that was about almost 2 weeks ago now that we've been on the confinement. Parisianers, because Paris was a hot spot, kind of like New York is in the States, and it just kind of makes sense. But as soon as he gave the order was going to take place the next day, and early the next morning and that night, there was something like 30% of Parisianers who have homes on the coast. They all got on the trains and they went to the coastal cities, and that was it was an understandable thing that they wanted to, say, hey, we're going to be confined. We're going to go to our summer cottage, out in this little town. But I can tell you the news we're hearing, the people in these little towns where the Parisianers have come are extremely upset because they just brought the virus there, and so France is, I think the last figure we heard is how many deaths are they at right now?
I haven't been following it, to tell you the truth.
I'm sorry, I just forgot.
Following, I just
throw that out.
But it does sound like you're ahead of us as far as that goes. That's kind of what's coming now, and we've had a little bit of that where New York, they try to keep folks from leaving there because they knew they would take it with them. Rebecca, you were about to say something.
Well, this is just maybe off the wall. I think every country thinks their medical program's the best. Because when Italy, we're following Italy. We're like 5 days, 7 days after Italy. So that's who we're watching. And when they have a peak, and when they come to their peak, we know, well, in about a week, we're going to come to our peak. And when they first started describing, I mean, we knew China and everything, but France was like, we have a better medical than we know more. This is kind of the mentality, they were letting Italians to come in for football games and all that. Well, I think every country thinks that. I think their medical system's the best, and they don't want to believe that it's as bad as what some other country that they find maybe inferior is telling them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing you need to realize. These other countries, they're not making this up.
Yeah, it's real.
It's really bad. Yeah,
it's real. Now, you guys, you're sick and you're in the midst of all this. You're missionaries as well. How do you see the light of Christ coming out in this pandemic? How are you able to see the gospel even move forward in this situation there in France?
That's a good question. Since I have not been diagnosed with having the virus. I don't, and that's one of the things too. You don't know. I possibly could have had it without having symptoms, but I have been nonetheless. There's no other place to go, so we're practicing social distancing as much as we can in the house, and I think we're basically behind it. I have experienced some symptoms like extreme fatigue and what have you. Part of that, simply to get to your question, as far as our own personal ministry, really the last 2 weeks we've been on shutdown because we haven't been able really to do anything. We've been doing a lot of texting with our church family. I've been doing. I know a lot of churches are doing the online services. Depending on how long this is going to go, we might be doing that. But right now, we've just been encouraging our church family to go to some of the church sites that do have a service, and they've been benefiting from that, which really has been positive too, because even though we're not having our own, I think they've enjoyed getting to hear somebody else preach, and I think they've enjoyed seeing the larger body of Christ, and that's been really interesting. And I think too, one of the things we've noticed, like we keep close contact with our neighbors, not physically, but just calling them, letting them know that we care about them. We have across the street two neighbors, a woman and her daughter, and they both have fragile health. They have health issues, and so we try to take opportunities like that too, just to express interest in people, let them know we care about them, and a lot of people are doing that, and I think that's going to have an impact. I think.
Yeah.
And well, over here too, the government, churches can't be open.
Mm-hmm.
Can't have people to. I think you can have a church open because the Catholic churches never close during the day, and I think you can go in there to pray. But as an assembly coming together, you cannot get together. So as far as services go, you can't have those. And nobody looks at that as being against our liberty. We just feel like it's common sense.
Yeah. And it sounds like really that's kind of the early church way too. You're talking about caring for your neighbors and trying to take care of one another, and it's really all we can do at this point. But it's very effective, though. I think is what you were saying.
Well, once I feel 100% better. Still you will be quarantined, but you are more free to. Do you need groceries? Can I go get something for you? I'll drop them off in front of your house. That kind of stuff. But I'm limited right now, and he's limited.
Oh yeah.
He's not supposed to go out that much either because I'm sick. Right. So your hands are tied. But.
Let me just add one thing, because I mentioned about the online service, and while we haven't been able to do that, I know like Dennis Teague and Matt Price, who are ministering in San Jose, and Joel Teague in their ministry, they're doing online services. And one of the things they've reported to me is that it's been incredible, the number of hits that they've gotten,
Right.
And so it's actually been an opportunity. Dennis was telling me the other day, people that normally would never set foot inside a church, they're getting online and so that's been pretty neat too, to see those opportunities.
That's pretty cool. Well, I want you to know we appreciate you all. We appreciate what you're doing. You're loved. People are praying for you, and I would like to have a prayer for you before we close out, and let's just pray that God will be with you and bless you. Father, I thank you for Miss Becky. I thank you for Steve. I thank you for how you've used them for so many years in France. And I ask right now that you'll be with them. I ask that you'll heal Miss Becky, help her to feel so much better. Thank you for how you've helped her so far. Please help Steve, Lord, to stay strong and to be healthy, and just bless them, Lord. Watch over them and help them in this difficult time. We ask, Lord, that you'll be with the nation of France. We ask that you'll be with the medical personnel and all of our Christians, all our brothers and sisters. Help them as they try to minister in this difficult situation. And we just ask that the gospel will go forward, that many people will be saved in France and throughout the world. It's in your name we pray and we ask these things. Amen. Well, thank you both. Thank you to both of you. Yes, Miss Becky.
I just wanted to use the opportunity to thank everyone for praying and for caring. I haven't been able to respond to all the messages, but I appreciate their prayers very, very much. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and we love you all. We're praying for you, and we trust that you're going to be much healthier real soon, and God's going to use this. He's going to bless France.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you guys be safe too. Take this seriously and be safe.
Will do. God bless you.
Thank you.